Next, we will use the information about the per unit cost structure of the firm to figure out how much the firm will supply at different prices in the market. It helps to start by thinking about what the firm's goal is. Typically, we would say that firms seek to maximize profits, for which we typically use the Greek letter pi. Profit is simply the difference between total revenue and total costs. If the firm is selling a single type of output, which we typically assume, then total revenue will simply be price at which the firm can sell each unit times quantity, the number of units it sells, minus the total cost of producing that number of units of output. How can the firm maximize this difference? Let's think about how that profit changes as we increase output by a small amount or by a unit. The change in profit that results from a change in output equals the change in total revenue, so P times Q, corresponding to that change in output, minus the change in total cost, again corresponding to that change in output. Now, the change in total cost that corresponds to a 1 unit change in output, we've already defined this measure. That's simply marginal cost. That's what we have graphed here. This is the difference in total revenue when you sell one more unit. Well, let's examine this product. Price, recall, is the price at which the firm is able to sell its units of output, which typically we would expect might depend on the amount of output in the market, since remember, demand curves are downward sloping. However, under perfectly competitive markets, each firm, we said, is too small to make a dent in the market. Essentially, what that means is that price, P at which the firm is able to sell its output, is not going to be affected by how much it sells. So if P is a constant within this ratio, then it will simply be something we can move outside of the change operator. So this will simply equal P. So the change in profit that results from an increase in output will simply equal the price in the market. I'm writing it this way to emphasize that it does not depend on how much the firm produces, minus marginal cost. So once again, this is under the assumption that the firm takes the price in the market as given, and regardless of how much it produces, it is not going to affect it. So when we're saying here that we're determining the firm's short-run supply, that is for a price-taking firm. So, when will profit be maximized? Certainly not as long as this is still positive. So if we're on the increasing portion of marginal cost and price in the market is still above marginal cost, that means that as we produce more units, our revenues from those units are greater than the cost of producing them, so we should continue to increase production. Once marginal cost is above price in the market, that means that we're losing money with each extra unit we produce. And so the way to maximize profit will be to produce such an amount that these equal each other. So we're going to look for the output level where price in the market equals marginal cost of production. However, we need to specify one more thing. Note that at different levels of price, it's possible that there are 2 points where marginal cost equals that price. There's one segment here where marginal cost is in the process of decreasing, and then there's another segment where it is in the process of increasing. If price equals marginal cost, but marginal cost is decreasing, well, that means that the next unit will have lower cost than the price we can get for it, so we should not stop producing. So the second condition we need to specify is that marginal cost is increasing. So as we're producing more and more units, the cost per unit is in the process of going up. So what does this tell us? It tells us that given some price in the market, the firm will choose output level such that marginal cost at that level equals the price in the market. So for example, we mark this as the market price. Then the firm's output level will be decided in such a way that marginal cost at that level equals price in the market. If price in the market were to increase, then output of the firm will also increase. If price in the market decreases, then the quantity supplied by the firm also decreases. In other words, the marginal cost curve is the supply curve. So a price-taking firm with this marginal cost curve will have a supply curve along marginal cost. How can we identify the firm's profit in this graph? Remember we said profit is total revenue minus total cost. In other words, this is price times quantity minus total cost. Well, total cost, we can write it as average total cost times Q. In other words, the firm's profit equals the number of units it sells times the difference between price and the average total cost. This is simply reorganizing the definition. This is the most helpful way to try to read profit in the graph because we already have the average total cost curve drawn. And so at output level Q, this is how much it costs on average to produce each unit, counting all types of costs. So if this is average total cost at output level Q, then since profit is the product of Q times the difference between price and average total cost, it will simply equal the area of this rectangle. So this rectangle from price to the average total cost at that level times Q is going to tell us what the firm's profit level is. As you can see then, profit will be positive as long as at the output level chosen, price is above the average total cost. What if the market price is below the minimum of average total cost, but above the minimum of average variable cost? In that case, let's show it here, for example. The firm will produce an output level dictated by this intersection of price and marginal cost. And at this level of output, average total cost takes a certain value. It's above the minimum value. So that's the average total cost at this output level. Then for profit, we're going to again multiply Q, so the amount of output, with the difference between price and average total cost. except that now average total cost is above price, so this will be negative. So profit will be this rectangle, but it will be negative. So what does this tell us? Should the firm not produce? If it shuts down, the firm's profit will be negative sunk cost, in this case FC. In that case, whether or not it produces will depend not on whether profit is positive, but rather on whether it's greater than this shutdown profit. In other words, the firm's profit under the option that it produces, if we separate total cost into variable and fixed, then we could see that we can write it as quantity times the price minus average variable cost minus fixed cost. Then we're comparing this versus this. In other words, we're comparing price with the average avoidable cost per unit. So the firm's supply curve, therefore, will trace the marginal cost curve, but only until this minimum price of average variable cost. So this is our supply curve, and below the minimum of average variable cost, supply is simply 0. There's a discontinuous jump here, where the firm is indifferent between shutting down and producing 0 units or producing this specific quantity of output. We will call this the shutdown price. And as we see here, it is simply driven by the average variable cost, which in turn is capturing the marginal cost. To sum up, a price-taking firm's short-run supply curve is given by its marginal cost curve for prices above the minimum of average variable cost, and supply will be 0 for prices below that. When price exactly equals minimum of average variable cost, either one of these options can be taken because they're equivalent, and so there's this one point where we have an undetermined value of output. However, importantly, while at this price, the firm is indifferent between producing 0 or Qmin, it would not consider producing a quantity in between. The minimum of average total cost is the point where profit will be 0. It does not mark a difference in whether or not the firm produces. At this region of price, the firm is producing in the short run,